Welcome to Being at Home with George. I'm excited to be here. And I'd like to start off the way we normally start off, which is to create the possibility of both embracing whatever comes up and saying yes to it, and at the same time, generating the hope. I like to talk about what we've been experiencing for a long time, but especially the last couple of weeks where you've had these mass shootings and these acts of destructiveness, not valuing human life and human beings. And so we've had this conversation for quite a while now about what to do. I'm thinking back to 2012 during the Sandy Hook massacre of children and teachers and administrators. And we've been talking about what to do. And the reality of the situation is that if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And that's been what they say. If you don't know history, history keeps repeating itself if you don't learn from history. So here it's about a learning. It's about reflecting and thinking about how do we do things differently. So something has to change. And I believe no matter what side of that argument we're on, and it doesn't have to just be about gun control, it could be about anything, any conflict, that one of the things we have to do is all agree that something has to change. We can't sustain. And so what I like to say, and if I were to put a title on this conversation, it would be the status quo has to go. And it's not like a force out or forcible, but it's just coming to the realization that we're not happy, things are not happening the way we want them to. And if we want to change, we have to change. Because if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. So everything begins with the mind, with consciousness. So we have to be willing to see things in new and different ways. And we have to realize, as Einstein said, the significant problems we face today cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness we were at when we first created them. So we have to change our mind. We have to change what we're doing. And whatever we do, we have to understand that that change has to be aligned with us creating a future that we want to live into. Maybe creating a future for those who want to be able to have their guns can have their guns, but at the same time, those who shouldn't have guns don't have guns, and we get guns out of the hands of people who are assassinating others. And so we have to come up with a solution that reflects mutual benefit, mutual respect. We're not there yet. And so we know we have to change our consciousness. We have to change how we see things. And in order for that to happen, because what I see happens is that normally when we get information, we are willing to change our ideas or change our view of things. But in this current climate, when we get the information and if it doesn't fit with what we already believe, we double down and we don't let it in. So we're closed off. We're not talking to each other. So the first thing we have to do is get out of survival mode. Get out of the fight, flight, freeze. That's the old reptilian brain, which is all it knows is fighting, fleeing, including freezing, foraging for food, and reproducing. And it's what I would call the fight, flight, or freeze, where there's no space between stimulus and response, and we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing, and we get emotionally hijacked. And so there's no space for us to create anything new. In my book, I talk about the idea of this Cherokee grandfather talking to his grandson, talking about the battle inside of him. This ferocious battle is happening between two wolves. And for simplicity, I'll call one wolf the fear or survival mode, and the other wolf the love wolf or the growth mode. And the grandson gets very, very concerned and said to grandfather, which one will win? And he says, the one that we feed. And so the idea is we got to get out of survival mode and we got to stop feeding the fear wolf and focusing on how we're different and how we want to dominate or we don't want to lose something, and get into growth mode where there's a willingness to understand that the only way to conquer hate is through love, not more hate. And that we have to focus on the greatest good, think about mutual benefit, mutual respect, and understand that love is productive. Love is something where we make something grow. We want to create something, just not my way, your way, but our way, or something that gets us to that. Yeah, we want to change things. We want things to be different, but we have to be willing to change our consciousness or level up thinking new and different ways. Because if we stay at the same level of consciousness we were at when we created them, nothing happens. So talking at each other is not going to work. We got to be willing to let go, to grow, and to start from that place of vulnerability where we're willing to see how we can get beyond the illusion of separateness and see that I and the other are one. And for me, it's been a journey for me when I just think about my development and my growth, and going back to almost 40 years ago, 38 years ago in July, when I had a substance abuse issue. And one of the things I recognized was, on a certain level, the way I kept seeing things and the level of consciousness that I was at when I first got into drugs and alcohol, even though it came by way of sports medicine, that in order for me to grow, I had to change the level of consciousness I was at. So I've been improving my conscious contact with what we call higher power, God, and just raising my consciousness. So as I raise my consciousness, the option of taking drugs and alcohol or getting into stinking thinking or being selfish, self-centered fear, that changed because I keep raising it and keep raising it to the level of love where I realize that I and the other are one, I and the Father are one, or I'm just a wave in the ocean. And even though as an individual wave, it's still part of something greater than myself. And so if we can focus on the greatest good, the thing that's going to help us the most, and remember what I learned in kindergarten, that I need to treat people the way I want to be treated. So we have to realize that we have mutual benefit, mutual respect, and let's focus on what we can build together, what we have in common, and get beyond that. So for me, when I realized that I had to keep raising my consciousness, keep feeding the love wolf, and when I got into survival mode, get into growth mode, so in the space between stimulus and response, I get freedom and power to choose to be loving, to choose to feed the love wolf, to choose to see myself and others are connected. There's an illusion of separateness we get through every once in a while, whether it's 9/11 or the marathon bombing or the fires in California or floods in the southern part of the country, that when we can come together and we can forget about all of those other things and just realize that I have divinity just like the other person, and my job is to help the other person, because that's what I would want for myself, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's how I got through the recovery, and that's why I'm not struggling with trying to take a drink or drug, because my consciousness, how I see myself, seeing things in new and fresh ways, and realizing as I feed the love wolf, then there's no need for me to get into the fight, flight, and freeze. Although that happens, all I need to know is when I'm reacting and not responding, I need to pause, whether it's prayer, meditation, or talking to somebody, or just forgetting myself to find myself by serving someone else or being of service, and I can create that space. And in that space, I can choose love. I can choose to treat others the way I would like to be treated. And so I'll just end by saying, like Einstein said, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And the first thing we need to change is our mind. When we change our mind, when we change our beliefs, then that will change our thoughts. And when we change our thoughts, that will change our words. As Gandhi says, and as we change our words, we change our actions. And as we change our actions, we change our habits. And as we change our habits, we change our values. And as we change our values, we change our destiny. So if we're going to make it as a country, we have to figure out how to change the level of thinking that we were at when this problem first came around, and be willing to do new things. Because if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And that's what we've been getting. So if we want to change, it's not about blaming or denying. It's about everyone taking responsibility and saying, how can we level up? Or how can we change the level of consciousness so what we are getting is different? Because how we're seeing, how we're thinking is different. So let's think mutual benefit, mutual respect. Love is productive. Instead of tearing things down, let's build things up.